Hey, good afternoon, everybody. And my name is Ken Crotts, and this is Real Talk Live. My real estate podcast that informs people about what's going on in the real estate world in the Northwest. So I just wanted to take a minute and go over a couple things. We're having a couple technical. There we go. Got my screen back. So I wanted to share an interesting topic with you today. One of the reasons why I love real estate is it's ever changing. I've been in the business for 35 years. I'm currently with eXp Realty, and I've sold over 2,000 houses. So the fun of it is I started in the days before the computer, before the internet, before all the wild things that we have now, and it's always changed ever since then. But one of the most recent changes, and what I wanted to talk to you about today, is the advent of the iBuyer. So what is an iBuyer? An iBuyer is an institutional cash buyer that is buying single-family properties in the community. And they've actually been around for a little while, but I'm going to share with you how the iBuyer is changing real estate and how it's going to change the way real estate is bought and sold for many of the buyers in the marketplace. So there are several different types of cash buyers. So when you say cash buyer, a lot of people get this image in their mind of, the greasy house flipper that's going to come into your house, come onto your property and lowball a price to you for cash and make you a lot of terms that may or may not come to fruition. And that's not what we're talking about here. Now, there are a lot of different types of cash buyer. That's one. There's a cash buyer that is sometimes just a small investor who's slowly growing their portfolio, usually a private individual who's using savings or some saved money to acquire real estate. And now we have the iBuyer, which is an institutional buyer. It's can be a privately or publicly held company that is buying real estate on a large scale. You might have heard recently that Zillow just pulled out of their iBuyer program, where they were buying properties, fixing them up and reselling them. In fact, it was a big push to create a new profit center for them, and the real estate market is huge. So it's totally understandable, and the people at Zillow are really very smart. But everything works great until you put people into the mix. Now, as it turns out, they've had to lay off or let go of 25% of their workforce as a result. So this is an example of a big 800-pound gorilla company in the real estate market where it didn't work. But I know, I work with companies that have been doing it very, very successfully for a very long time and own thousands and thousands of homes in the communities that you live in, and you don't even realize it. So some other institutional buyers. Invitation Homes is a local buyer. They're publicly traded. They're buying a lot of houses. They've been probably the most successful example I know of. Zillow just had kind of a bomb out, and that's unfortunate. Purple Door, they're not operating in the Seattle area, but they're a national company. They're doing very much the same thing. And there are several others. Now, an institutional buyer is a publicly or privately held company. They're buying properties, but the fun part about this is each iBuyer has their own individual buy box. For instance, there are iBuyers that will buy homes, fix them up, and then resell them for a profit. There are iBuyers that will go into properties and they just want to do the lipstick part of the superficial part of fixing up a house. And there are others that will go in and they like to do a complete tear down and rebuild several houses where one existed in an inner city setting. And the more successful iBuyers I've seen in this market, the ones that are making the better offers, the higher offers to the retail seller, are the iBuyers that are purchasing properties, fixing them up to their standards in most cases, and then renting them out. And the reason is if you're buying and fixing up a house and reselling it, there are just certain things that you have to take into account. And let me see here if I can get my screen share up. I'm not seeing the button here. Well, so when a buyer purchases a property with the intent of fixing up and reselling it, there are certain things you have to account for. You have the purchase price, the acquisition price of the property. you have to add on top of that the closing costs, whether it's just title and escrow or if you're paying commissions or whatever. On top of that, you have to add your financial carrying costs. So even Zillow, if they buy a house for cash, they have to account for the interest rate that they would have been making or what it's costing them to park that money in that property. Same thing if you get a loan, you're paying interest, carrying costs. Typical hard money, if you were a private investor, is 12%. You're paying 1% a month, or on a $500,000 house, you'd be paying $5,000 a month to carry that property through your rehab. So you have acquisition, closing costs, financing costs on top of that. Now you have put some money towards fixing it. That might be $30,000 to $50,000 these days. And then on top of that, when you go to sell a property, you have to pay the closing costs and commissions again. And somewhere in there, you've got to figure out how to get a profit. So, with all those costs, the acquisition, financing, rehab, carry costs, closing costs, profit, and to the final purchase price, it's really understandable why the house flippers come in and offer you 60% of the value of your house, or the value of the as repaired value of your house. It's because they have a lot of costs to carry. It's just baked in financials that you can't get away from. There are greasy people that try to make more than a reasonable profit, but in my perfect world, I hope you would understand, if you're a seller, that to some extent those numbers are baked in and they can't pay you what a retail buyer would pay you. A retail buyer being usually a private buyer that would, when you list your property for sale, comes along and they intend to own and live in the property. That's a definition of a retail buyer. Now, the reason why an iBuyer that is going to rent the property out can pay you more is because their profit isn't seen immediately. They acquire the property, they have some closing costs, and they have some rehab costs, typically not as much. But the profit that they need to make doesn't have to be immediately realized. It can be realized as tax benefits, appreciation, depreciation over the period of years that they hold the property. So as a result, they don't have that enormous financial burden or that math that they have to deal with when they're buying and selling properties. So iBuyers are a fantastic way to sell your house. So what are the benefits? Let's see here. What are the benefits to a seller? Why would you be interested in selling your house to a cash buyer who just kind of come in and lowball you? I hear that all the time. They're just going to lowball. It's the biggest thing that we're dealing with right now in the community when we're out talking about this and advertising for it and in non-forums and having phone discussions is people have a preconceived notion that every cash offer is going to come in as a lowball, greasy cash offer where somebody's trying to take advantage of you. That's not necessarily the case. But what are the benefits, though, of a cash offer? So, number one, it's cash. It means that you've eliminated one of the parties from the transaction. One of the parties that often creates a lot of the issues, and not creates, but it's a source of, which is the bank. You don't have an appraiser. So the cash buyers who come in, they'll make their own determination of value, make an offer, you accept it. You don't have an appraiser come along saying, well, did you get it right? Is that the right property? I think it's less, and causing low appraisal issues. There's no underwriter. The cash buyer has their own money. There's no underwriter to scrutinize their income, their credit, all the things that a buyer has to all the hoops they have to go through in order to get a loan to get a mortgage. So it's really convenient that way. These buyers, in most cases, I'm not going to say all because there's a lot of different cash buyers. In most cases, a cash buyer is going to buy the property as is. So where I find in my travels and speaking with people personally about this a lot, this is one of the areas of big concern that private homeowners have about selling their property. There's houses are basically boxes that are rotting in the rain in the Northwest. They all have maintenance, and most have some level of deferred maintenance. And there's a notion out in the real estate market that your house has to be perfect to put it on the market. It's going to be professionally staged. We have professional photographers, and all the maintenance and everything has to be done on that property. So Mr. or Mrs. Buyer could come in and buy a house that's literally perfect. In fact, they're going to have a 3-hour inspection and they're going to nitpick everything. They want the doorknobs polished, and they want the dryer vent cleaned, and all these little nitpicky things. A cash buyer is going to buy the house as is. In most cases, I find that the cash buyer prefers to do the deferred maintenance repairs themselves because they have contractors they know and rely on, and if the repair isn't made well, they have somebody they can go back to and get that repair properly made. If you think about it, it's very common for a seller to have to put a roof on a house. So as a buyer, why would you want a seller putting the roof on a house? This person is having to do this. Cost is the only element that's probably the big issue for them, and they're putting something on a roof that's going to protect it for 20 or 30 years, hopefully. So in most cases, iBuyers will put in their own repairs, and in most cases, I would suggest if you're buying a house and you can do this, there's circumstances where you can't. If there's major repairs that you get a set aside or somehow a compensation or lower price and use your own cash to make major repairs like furnaces, hot water heaters, and roofs, because you know what, it's your house. You're going to want it to last, and so that's just a side note. Sorry about that. Flexible terms. You know, the iBuyer the iBuyer doesn't have a situation where they've just sold their house or they've given notice at their apartment, they've rented a U-Haul, they've got all their friends, they bought a bunch of pizza and soda to get them to load everything into it, and now they're driving to a location where they expect to unload it, and if it doesn't close on time, their world's going to come crashing down. These are unfortunately too common in the real estate field, where the closing date has to be so perfectly timed, and the buyers and sellers and multiple parties are counting on it, where it's really kind of a personal crisis if things don't happen on time. With an iBuyer, they're not moving into your house. In fact, they might not even come and look at the house after closing for a number of weeks, because they've got to free up their contractors to come take a look at the house and begin repairs. So you have the flexibility of being able to, in most cases, move the closing one way or another. Some iBuyers will allow a rent back to allow the seller to move in a time that's going to be less stressful for them. And, for a lot of sellers, that's a big benefit. The stress of moving is one of the biggest stresses in our lives. It eliminates the uncertainty and confusion that just happens when you're moving from one location to another. And where timing has to be perfect in a retail sense, with a cash offer, you typically have a lot better flexibility. One of the things I like best about a cash offer is it just allows the client, the seller, to move their focus from today to the future. Right? Where are you going to? What's your life going to be like? There's a reason you're making the move, and usually it's a good one. Right? Focus on the new house you're going to be living in. Focus on getting your family or your job or whatever set up where you're going, and get the anticipation of the restaurants and the places you're going to shop and all the things you're going to get to do in a new location. With a cash buyer, once they sign that offer and they've approved the house through, in most cases, a light inspection by their contractor, you're good to go. You can count on that closing, and so you don't have to worry about that appraisal coming in low, the buyer buying a couch on credit and blowing his credit report and having your transaction blow up at the finish line. That uncertainty is gone, and it's pretty rare that we have issues with iBuyers, once they have their contractor come through and sign off on the property. Another strategy that we've been able to use very successfully is the contingent buyer. I'm in the process now of looking for a house to buy, and if I buy a house at a certain price, I have to sell my house first. So contingent purchases, buying the new house contingent on the sale of this house, is one of the most fraught with peril transactions that you can do. There are so many things that can go wrong and so many things that need to be perfectly coordinated. First and foremost, when I'm out looking at houses, if I'm going to buy a house contingent on the sale of this house, most sellers don't want to deal with the offer. They'd rather take an offer from a buyer that has to get financing only and not have to sell their house. And so when you're buying contingent, it can be very difficult. In fact, there are a lot of buyers, and Boy, I'll tell you what, I've estimated at some point up to 20% of the market are contingent buyers that are not buying because they can't buy a house contingent on the sale of their home. They just can't compete with the cash offers and the other buyers that are non-contingent. So they look around, they get frustrated, they just go back and kind of give up. Well, with a cash offer, we make an offer on the house, you accept it, we go through the walkthrough inspection, we're good to go. Now your house is sold for cash, right? The iBuyer, depending on the iBuyer, but the iBuyer doesn't care if you close in 6 days or 6 months. So now your house is sold. You can go out into the real estate market, find the perfect home, take your time because you have a flexible closing date. When you find that home, you can make an offer on that property contingent on your financing and subject to the closing of the iBuyer cash deal. Now, when you go to that listing agent, you say, this is a cash deal. It's already signed off, ready to go. We're just waiting to find the perfect house. Yeah, you're so much stronger, and it really makes you competitive in the marketplace. You're much more akin to a typical buyer, a typical retail buyer, and you can compete. So all of you contingent buyers or have a house to sell before you can buy a new house, this is a great way for you to be able to buy that home and do it with less hassle and in less time and with less stress. So that I think is one of the probably the most underutilized tools of the cash buyer program. You know, back in the day in the 90s and the early 2000s, we had what were called bridge loans that would bridge that gap between the old home and the new home. But you really don't have bridge loan programs these days. There may be one or two out there. But they're not as prevalent as they used to be, and why would you do that when you get a cash offer and not pay all the extra fees? So that is, I think, one of the best parts of it. So, all right, what is express offers? I hope. Well, before I go there, I hope I've got your wheels turning. Because there's a lot of attributes to this that you might not have thought about. And I hope that you're starting to see, if you're watching this, that a cash offer from an iBuyer is not like an offer from a greasy a house flipper that's trying to get as much equity of your equity as they can to flip the house and sell it to somebody else. This is an institutional buyer with well-designed, well-established processes, well-established values, undeniable amounts of money to buy your house, and with the certainty that once they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. So this is the new way. This is the new way that real estate is being bought and sold. And you know what? There are hundreds and hundreds of houses being sold like that in the Pacific Northwest right now as we speak. So how does it work at Northwest Express Offers? Well, how does this change in the market? We put together Northwest Express Offers with eXp Realty. And we're taking the iBuyer, cash buyer principle to the next level. The next iteration, the next change in real estate is where we have at Express Offers with eXp multiple cash buyers that have signed on to the Express Offers platform that will allows us to present your house to multiple cash buyers all at once. We have established standards, checklists to establish the value, not the value, but the condition of your house. Set number of photos we're going to take to make sure that every house has a standard presentation to the iBuyer platform at Express Offers. And what it allows us to do is to present your house to multiple cash buyers at once and have multiple cash buyers bidding on your property at the same time. And I can tell you, in my experience where we've had multiple cash buyers bidding on a given house, there can be a fairly wide discrepancy between the low and the high bidder. So having multiple cash buyers creates a market, it creates a competition, and increases the amount of money that you can get. It also, remember the buy box, where each iBuyer has a certain number of things, a certain profile of property that they want to buy. It also increases the odds that your house is going to fit into somebody's buy box. So thereby also increasing the opportunity for you to get a cash offer, because with the buy boxes, not every house is going to fit I had a person call me today. Has $1 million property. It's a perfect retail, beautiful home. Doesn't fit for the iBuyer program. They're better off listing it. So when you contact us, we're going to do a market analysis or a market evaluation on your property. Because ultimately, for you to know whether or not a cash offer is a good offer or not, you need to know what the alternative, what the retail value of your house is. I've been doing real estate for 35 years. I've sold over 2,000 houses, and I'll do a professional market analysis. So we can say, if we were to list this house, this is the price that buyers would be willing to pay, a retail buyer would be willing to pay. That way, when we collect the information, do the photographs on your property, submit it to the express offers and actually some other iBuyers we work with, when the offers come back, you'll have a basis from which to compare them. So if your house has a lot of deferred maintenance and you don't have the cash to put on a roof and do the furnace and do other repairs on the property, or your situation is such that you want to get moving on a house and you just want the deal done so you can go move on to another community or another house or another state or location, it may make sense for you to accept a little bit less in a cash offer and avoid all the headaches and hassles and just move on with your life. So we're going to collect that information. You'll know what you're going to get as a listed property. We'll document the property. Then we submit the home to Northwest Express Offers, and then you'll receive the offer on your property. So when the offers come in, I'm going to sit down with you. We're going to review the offers, and we're also going to compare it to what you would get on a retail basis. At that point, you can decide what's best for you. Is it going to be best for me to accept this cash offer, to do a retail listing and try to get more for the house? In some cases, with a flexible iBuyer, we have been able to take the cash offer as a backup offer and then go out and seek a retail offer from a retail buyer. So get this. So now your house is sold to an iBuyer and you know what the bottom line price is. If you can improve it with a retail buyer that comes in and is willing to pay more, if they are, or if you get in a bidding war and somebody's willing to pay more, you can get that price. Now, if midway through the transaction that buyer gets squirrely or starts to go sideways, or you get a low appraisal or something, you still have that backup offer guaranteeing you that your house is sold. So that eliminates a lot of the uncertainty that can come along with having a retail buyer and never really being sure that they're going to close until the day they close. So I hope you find this useful. I think that cash offers are definitely going to be a big factor in the market going forward. A lot of people have predicted it. We've had a lot of big companies like Zillow trying it out. Redfin has tried it out. I think that this is going to, as the market becomes more stabilized and back to normal, where we're not seeing the egregious appreciation we've had, they will have an even bigger role. If we were to have a downturn with foreclosures going up, you would see a lot more of those as well. But the iBuyer is here to stay. They provide an absolutely valuable resource for sellers who want to get their homes sold or who have houses that they don't want to do deferred maintenance on, or just buyers that want to move on and don't want their house on the market. I find it actually surprising how much people are willing to just say, look, I'll sell it for less, I don't want people in my house. And that's not even a COVID thing. So anyway, my name is Ken Crotts. I'm with eXp Realty and Northwest Express Offers. If you have questions or comments, I'd love to discuss this. I think the future of real estate is now, and it's just going to get better next year. So I'll look forward to answering your questions and comments. And if you have any questions for me, you can reach out via Facebook, Messenger. We're happy to talk anytime. Have a great day.